Hello everyone. In this screencast, I'm going to walk you through the lesson plan project that I created through the Instructional Technology program at Kennesaw State. I'm going to start by showing you something that I would give my students on the first day introducing this project. It's called Mi Playlist. I'm a Spanish teacher, so this project is done 100% in Spanish. I do give them the instructions in English, and actually I have another teacher at the school right now that teaches ESL that's going to be implementing this project with her students learning English. So the instructions are perfect for her, but she's going to have to do a little bit of editing. You'll see throughout the different documents that I show you for her students. But this can be really fit to a lot of different standards, and in the foreign language classroom, this hits a whole lot in connecting culture to writing and connecting their culture with the culture of their music and things like that. So this is what I would show them. I wanted to give them up front that it was going to be graded as a project or a test, which in my class is 30% of their overall average. I give them numbered bulleted lists to kind of provide a little bit of a scaffolding so they don't see a huge paragraph, they just see a few different sections broken down. So the project in general is going to be them creating a playlist through using their phone, their MP3 player, whatever kind of musical device they may have, going through their own music to learn or to represent themselves, to represent their culture. So that's their products, their practices, and their perspectives. Students are expected to create a 10-song playlist that half represents their past or their present, and then half of the songs would represent their future. And if you can see in number 2, it actually says that they are writing 5 to 7 sentences in Spanish as to why they chose the song to represent them. So that's the basic gist of the project, is that they're to create this 10-song playlist, and then they'll actually be presenting it. If you look at number 4, it says you'll choose one of your present songs and one song of your future to present to the class in Spanish. And so their option at the very end is that they'd like to play the song, an approved song obviously for the school, about 15 to 30 seconds worth of the song, so that the students can actually hear some of what the student that was presenting was talking about. And a lot of the songs end up being repeated or popular songs that are on the radio, so that's pretty cool. So that's what I would give them to start with. I'd also give them a rubric. Now this rubric looks relatively general, and I chose that on purpose because this project really allows them to use their creative minds and their personal lives and backgrounds to choose the songs, to choose the different scenarios that they're going to be writing about. So really the things that I wanted to hit on, if you can tell what's worth the most, is that they're able to conjugate their verbs in both the future and the present tense, and that's a standard in our foreign language classroom. So I'm really looking at their ability to conjugate verbs, but the rest of it is going to be like the descriptions and the CD cover that they're creating are going to be are very dependent upon what they choose. I wanted this to be very learner-based, and so they are able to choose what best fits them in order to complete the project, which I really wanted. So the rubric is general, but notice there's a ton of room over here for teacher notes, so that as I'm grading it, I can give them praise, or I can give them some pointers, or maybe ways that they got a little confused, or ways that they really enhance their writing through, conjunctions or through transition words, things like that. So that's why this rubric looks a little bit blank. It's usually filled up by the time I'm done grading it. Another thing that I would give them is an example of what kind of things that they will want to add in their writing in these 5 to 7 sentences that they're writing about each song. Now again, if you don't speak Spanish, then this might be, I'm not going to read it for you because you can see that it's in Spanish, but it's just generally 5 to 7 sentences that they are writing. I chose to write in the present tense for this first song, Lifetime, and then in the future tense, which is what they're also going to be using for half of their songs for this example, just to kind of give them an idea of what's going on. I also allow my students to listen to their music, to listen to the playlist that they've chosen throughout this project, which actually helps with behavior because they're kind of in their own little world working on their project. It worked really well, especially this year when I did it, for them to be able to listen to their music while they were writing their sentences. That way they're listening to lyrics over and over again, trying to think about why it best represented them. And then also it kind of keeps them on task. A lot of my students comment to me that they actually study better and work better when they're listening to their music at home. So since it actually relates to this project, they're able to use their device. Something that I haven't mentioned yet, which I want to make sure that I do, is that not all of my students actually have music players or iPods, things like that, to have a bank of songs to pull from. So also, I have a really good friend right down the hall that's got a class set of computers that she graciously opens her room up whenever my students need to go in there. So I have a few that actually spend the first part of class in her room, which she was a Spanish teacher as well, which is awesome. She can help them with any kind of confusion that they may have. But they're able to go in there and find songs that they might like, whether that's on YouTube or Spotify, or just, looking up famous songs that have to do with whatever part of their life they'd like to speak to in this project. So that's definitely a way to bring in that. I also have a requirement that my students, after they're done writing the sentences, they peer edit each other's work. And as they peer edit, they're encouraged to use SpanishDict.com or the app on their phones called Spanish Dict. It's a really wonderful Spanish to English or English to Spanish dictionary that they can use to help enhance their editing skills and affirm them in the things that they think are right. If they're a little bit unsure, they're able to use that online resource to really allow them to edit each other's papers well, which is really great. Also, something that I do after they're done writing, after they're done editing and they do their final draft, they are working together in pairs to practice their pronunciation, to practice their sentences and trying to memorize them. I don't let them use their notes for this assignment. It's at the very end of our semester, so they need to be able to stand up and talk for 2 or 3 minutes in Spanish in this Spanish 3 class. So that's what they do in pairs, and what's cool is that in Spanish 3, about half the class is actually native speakers, and the Spanish 3 class is the first one that we offer for them. Spanish 3, 4, and then they can take our AP class. So I usually pair students with a native speaker, if they are not native speakers, so that they can practice pronunciation and they can practice with someone who has knowledge and who is a native speaker, which is great. So I think the last paper that I actually have to show you, or I guess there's 2 more, is their listening guide, which they can complete while they are listening to other presentations. There's also an option if you set up a Google form, you can have them all log into that on their smartphones, and they can actually write down some of the answers to these. You can create a little survey. You probably wouldn't have as many things up here for them to answer. You may just put something like, this last one says something interesting that they learned about the presentation. Maybe you do that, where each student has to submit a response for each presenter that gives proof that they were actually listening to what the person was saying, and it kind of allows a little bit of an accountability that they are tuned in to what the presenter has to say. So that's another cool option. If they don't have an electronic device to do something like that, you can always have them work in small groups to do that, or in pairs, or you can have them write things down on paper to turn into you. And some may prefer that. It just depends. You always want to give them an option to do so if they feel like they need to do that. But the last paper is the oral presentation guide, which I have printed off 2, or I've formatted it so that there's 2 on a page. So I save paper because I usually sit in a student desk while my students are presenting so that I can see them and they are facing the class. I'm not, sitting at my desk away from the action. But the different categories is just a general oral speaking rubric, and they get this at the beginning of the semester, and this is the same rubric that I use throughout the semester for my classes. And the way that it's formatted is nice because I can actually use this with my Spanish 2 and 3 classes, and even 4s, because it's general enough. These different categories are general enough, but I can also hone in and explain more per class and per level what each one of them exactly means for them and their level of study. So this is the last rubric. If you have any questions, you can always email me, morgan.aiken@barrow.k12.ga.us. And I would love to share this project with you. Again, it can easily be formatted and rearranged to fit your classroom needs, to fit your classroom standards. It really encompasses a great deal of standards for a lot of classrooms. It is a writing intensive project, so you can always have them go to the computer lab and type things up. In my case, we're already in our testing mode, so all computer labs are taken at this point for standardized testing, so I wasn't able to get my students in. But you can always do that if you have students that may be slower writers or need a keyboard to process their information. And again, the Spanish Dict app is also wonderful for your students that struggle with writing or struggle with general communication, to really give them a boost of confidence in what they're doing. So anyways, again, I'm Morgan Aiken. Thank you so much for listening to this screencast. I hope you enjoyed it. And I know that my students have always been very excited about this project, so I hope that yours are too. Have a great day.